Okay, this is part 2, or video number 2 of the 3-loop braid. I'm picking up my comb. I'm going to take the rubber band off and lift the loops back up that I laid there to rest, palms up, and I lift from the outside of the comb, which is the outer or upper fingers. They will be the outer loops in the braid, and the way you hold your hands palms facing, they are the upper fingers. They start, so that hand only has one loop to lift up. Then I hold the comb with that hand and palms up, get ready to load onto my uppermost and outermost finger, the outermost loop, picking it up in the same orientation that I laid it down. If I had laid it down this way, you always lie it down and pick it up in this configuration. The tines of the comb are substituting as your fingers there. So there's one, and the second one. Okay, let's see. I kind of want to show a way to tighten. If you're having problems tightening, if you're making a 3-loop braid and it isn't a very forgiving material, actually for some reason this is not crumpling at all, but I would say most of the time when you tighten with any kind of firmness at all, which you sort of need if you don't want a really floppy 3-loop braid. I mean, this one, let's see. A 3-loop braid, let's see where the focus is so minimal that you do want it to be fairly firmly braided, or it's going to be very loose and floppy. The strands will be so, I don't know, it just looks better if it's firmly tightened, and yet there's a problem with that, because if you do tighten firmly with a 3-loop braid, it tends to crumple. It just doesn't have enough loops. When you pull it out the standard way into a straight line, or nearly so, doing a symmetrical move on both sides, and what I have found is that it's much, it's hard to do around the camera. I'm going to have to move in a different way, but you can tighten very firmly and get a very, which you might want to do with a 3-loop braid. If you hold after your transfer, if you hold the 2 loops, the side that has 2 loops, you hold them straight towards you and just pull the other loop all the way back, so it's all the way against the braid. It still needs to, the 2 sets of loops need to open up almost completely opposite each other to get a nice pattern that isn't too loose. They need to, that's more important than pulling tightly, actually. So now it's going to, the single loop is going to, you're going to pull it or arc it, move it in an arc, not letting it get loose and then jerking it. That is not so good, but in an arc all the way out and then back along the length of the braid that's been made, like that. And that way you actually can tighten fairly firmly without the braid crumpling. So I'll do that on both sides. It's going to be a little hard with the camera, but so here's the next loop transfer is through, take from above, shift, and now for tightening, try to avoid the camera and go all the way, keeping these 2 loops towards me in a straight line with the developing braid. This hand just goes back all the way to the braid. I'll do that a couple times. That's how I tighten. I usually reach a couple times. That socks the pattern up very nicely. So this is an alternative way to tighten just for a 3-loop braid. It really is helpful, and I would not teach this to a child. I think it's not very, what's the word? A child will want to do it symmetrically like this, and they shouldn't worry about the tension anyway. That they'll just don't even bring that up when teaching it to a young child, even a middle-sized child. They don't need to fuss about the quality of their braid. They shouldn't. And this is an asymmetrical and kind of awkward move. It's not that natural of a movement to alternate like that, but it really isn't very hard. So once you're used to the moves, this is a way to get a very nice, firm, pretty pattern and a strong braid while staying in control of it and having it not crumple up and get uneven. Let's see, I'm almost running out of loops here, and I wanted to also show the divided and flat versions of this braid. So this has been a cohesive square, or it actually turns out somewhat triangular or rounded braid. You can also make it divided, as I made for that loop, and flat, and it's easier to learn the divided version first because the flat version is a combination of the two, the two shapes. So for a divided version of this braid, I'm going to do almost the same exact moves, except that instead of reaching above the loop to take it, I'm going to reach through it. That's more important even than which side of the loop I grab onto. Going through it means it will not turn over as I bring it through. And because it doesn't turn over on either side, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go through both loops to take the index loop. That index loop did not turn over either. Shift, tighten, through both, pull, shift, tighten, through both, pull, shift, tighten, through both. Let's see if it shows. Pull, shift, tighten. Let's see if the divided braid is visible yet. You'll see it from the side. Yeah. It basically, it's been a double weave this whole time that you've been making this somewhat square braid. Has a top and a bottom surface that were joined. Now they're not joined because the loops aren't turning over. The upper surface and the lower surface aren't connecting at all. The upper shanks of the braid, these shanks are forming, and always have been, forming the upper surface of the braid. The lower shanks, those three at the bottom, are forming the lower surface of the braid. As you get towards the end of your loops, you can actually see this. My describing it doesn't sound very real, but very believable, but as you come towards the end of your loops, you can see this happening. You're making basically a pigtail braid on the top and a pigtail braid on the bottom, a three-strand braid. They're joined down here where your loops are joined, but the two sets of shanks are not joined. They're quite separate, and when you don't turn the loops as you take them, the braid separates into two braids. Okay, so that's how you do make a loop. And normally I would put one at the bottom of my braid, but now I'm going to join this loop together into a flat braid. And you do that with a combination of the two moves. So I will arbitrarily decide to turn the loops that are on the left of the braid and not turn the loops on the right side of the braid. My double weave braid will now be still, as it always was, two layers, an upper and a lower layer. Those layers were joined on both sides in the square version. Now they are going to be joined only on the left and not on the right. And normally, if this was a bigger, more loops, you would then fold it, open it, unfold it after braiding. I think normally, usually with a small braid, it's a three-loop braid, it will sort of braid open in any case. So now that I've confused everybody, I'm going to start braiding in a combination of the two ways I showed you before. I'm going to go on the left side of the braid. I'm going to go through one over the other one and take it. This turns it. It's flipping over as I take it. Oh, I did not shift yet there. Shift and tighten. And on the other side, on the right side, I'm going to go through both loops. I'm going to go through the loop that I take, thereby not turning it over. Here it comes. Shift, tighten. And I do have to remember this. I have to be consistent. So I would say left over, right through. Left over. You can say whatever works for you. I mean, that it doesn't have. You don't have to say what I'm saying. Just any mantra that will make you remember. On the right side, you're going to go through the loop. My usual mantra is actually turn and not turn, or turn and straight. So I normally would say turn, straight. And there I'm shifting as part while I'm tightening. It really doesn't matter when you shift. So turn, tightening and shifting, straight, turn, straight. I forgot what I was doing for a minute. Turn, it's going over, left over, right through, left over, shift, tighten, right, through, shift, tighten. Okay, let's see if that shows. I'm going to just, actually it's safest to park it. When I park my loops, I usually try, which means setting them on the other hand, I usually try and park them on the matching finger, the one that, so I have this one index finger I'm going to put over on the other hand. It'll help me, which I wasn't remembering at first, to put it on the index finger of the other hand, and then I know that when I come to take it off, I'll take it. With a 3-loop braid, it doesn't really matter that much, but okay, let's get it off and see if that flat braid shows. So here's the original. Let's hold it here. Here's the original braid. It looks a little bit different on the different sides. It isn't going to be totally symmetrical looking when you get down to as minimal as a 3-loop braid, but this is the bottom surface is the widest. With the way I make the braid by turning from above, the bottom surface will be the widest and has what I call zigs of color. The two side surfaces have chevrons. There's one, and then we go back to the bottom, and here's the other. The upper surface is the smallest. It should match the lower surface, and in a sense it does. It has zigs, or you could define those as zigs, but it's much narrower because of the way I was turning the loops. It's a balanced braid. It has no twist, but it is not totally symmetrical, the turning the loops in the way that I turn them, the way that anybody makes a 3-loop braid. It'll make a very compressed upper surface and a widened lower surface. So I don't know why I'm going into that. There's the square braid part. Here comes the divided part we did, the little loop. Normally I would put that at the end of a braid. I think they're kind of handy there. Now here's the flat part, which in a 3-loop braid doesn't usually braid folded the way it does in other braids, and in fact comes out in what I would normally call a 3/4 flat version, a little bit peaked in the middle, and you can pull it out. Pull the two edges out. Just by when you do that, you just pull the very outer edges. You don't pull from them. You don't hug the whole braid. So I'm pulling it a bit flatter because it's the tension of braiding. The lengthwise tension compresses it inward, and it wasn't as flat as it could be, ideally. So now I've stretched it out. There, it's a nice looking flat 6-element braid. A 3-loop braid has six elements. It would be, if it were a kumihimo braid, it would have 6 bobbins, 6 tama. So you can't see very much of the flat braid, but it's a really nice ribbon. It's a nice and fast, easy braid to make. It's somewhat impressive looking, I think, for how quick it is to make. And about at the end of my time here, so thanks for watching. I'll probably do another one to show how to start it with this loop. Start with no ends. That'll be a different segment. Thanks for watching.